Hey guys, welcome back to part 3 of the Civil War 2.0 video series. This video is going to be geared towards individuals who have determined that they are going to be non-actors in the conflict. These are people who are not going to pick a side. These are people who do not want to fight. They essentially want to leave everybody alone and want to be left alone, and pretty much all they want to do is just survive. This video is for those people and pretty much those people alone. So if you have determined that you are going to be an actor in the conflict, you might gain some stuff from this video, but chances are you probably already know quite a bit of what I'm about to say. So, either wait for the next video or continue watching if you just want to watch for entertainment. So, we're gonna start off by talking about some of the things that you need to be aware of in order to essentially not get killed or not die by other means. So the first thing you need to be aware of are uniforms. All the different uniforms of the actors in the conflict. You need to be aware of this for many reasons. And let me give you an example. Let's say you're trying to drive somewhere and you come across a checkpoint and you don't exactly know who is operating and manning that checkpoint. Well, not knowing the uniform of the individuals manning that checkpoint could get you killed. It happens in many conflicts all over the world. Somebody will come up to the checkpoint and they'll be questioned by their political rivals. And when their political rival sees a bumper sticker on their car that they don't like, they will take the person out of the car and shoot them, or something along those lines. Normally, and I'll leave most of the stuff I'm getting for this video is coming from a specific book, and I'll leave the name of that book in the description box below, so you can go ahead and read that book for yourself. But normally, it's for tribal reasons. That kind of stuff happens usually across tribal divisions and religious divisions. And so most of the time the checkpoint will be built and occupied by one tribe, and then as another tribe, someone from another tribe or religious group goes up to that checkpoint, they get questioned and they don't provide the right answer, and they get taken off to the side and shot and then dumped in a ditch. Happens all the time. And so that's just one example of why you need to know who has what uniform or what the uniforms look like, so that if you are coming upon a checkpoint, or if you are about to interact with someone, you know already what to expect because you know who they are. You know what they represent. You need to be familiar with their ideology as well, and so that you can distinguish whether or not they are trying to kill you or whether or not they are there to help you, essentially. So that's the first one. Also, since I mentioned checkpoints, I want to put this out there as kind of something that's also very important. The main reason that people die or get shot at checkpoints that are occupied by United States forces is because they are driving towards that checkpoint very fast, or because they do not comply with commands. Whether or not the commands are legitimate or are legal doesn't really matter, because if you don't comply with those commands, you're more likely to get shot. So because your life depends on whether or not you comply with the commands at the checkpoint, not whether or not those commands are legitimate. You can live another day to argue whether or not those commands are legitimate or not. But the safest thing for you to do when you come across a checkpoint is to drive slow and to obey any commands that are given to you. So you also need to familiarize yourself with all the different leaders and the different groups that are in your area, not just religious groups, but also gangs, political groups, and NGOs, and especially security contractors. You need to familiarize yourself with who they are, what they represent, what their goals are, and you need to distinguish whether or not they are going to be someone that is hostile towards you or someone who will essentially have your best interest in mind. One of the safest places to be normally, and this is going to be in the same book. This is in the same book that I mentioned earlier. It's going to be in the description box below. Normally, the safest place to be in conflicts and wars like this will be the large cities. And let me explain to you, I'll try to quickly explain to you why. Because the economy normally gets hit really hard, the government has a hard time funding their non-essential employees. And so what they do is a lot of times those non-essential employees, they have to go without pay for a while, and then they find out that they're not going to get paid, and so they quit, and they try to find other things to do. They try to find other things to do to make money. And because of that, the government pulls all of their employees into the city to protect themselves. Because where does the government operate? Where do they legislate? Where do they dictate? It's in the cities. And so because of that, when they bring all the military personnel and all that into the cities, they bring the equipment with them. And so the people who live in the cities and the people who find themselves in the cities are normally the safest. And I mean, it's time and time again, that's just the way it is. So you can take a look at the book. There are many examples of that point in the book that I'm dropping down there in the description box, so you can take a look at that for yourself, and so many different historical examples of that. And so if you have determined that you want to be a non-actor, the safest place for you to be, honestly, is probably going to be a city, a capital city. And I do believe that the major cities on the East Coast are going to be some of the safest, especially DC, New Jersey, and New York, especially DC. The outskirts are normally where the insurgents operate. And so, if those insurgents are hostile towards you, then you really want to get out of the outskirts. So, places out in the, that are far out in the countryside, you really want to make sure that you take off your bumper stickers from your cars, stuff like that, because you don't want people to know what it is that you adhere to, your political beliefs or your religious beliefs in a time like that, because I really do believe that there are going to be many groups that attempt to exploit the situation and hijack it for their cause, so that they will be able to get something out of it at the end. So yeah, it's hard. Because it's hard. It's going to be hard for the government to tax the population. It'll also be hard for the government to regulate the economy. So because of that, there will be black markets. And so this is an opportunity for you with the, even though the laws and the regulations will still technically be the same, the arm of the regulations will be essentially destroyed. So, they will not be able to enforce the regulations. So this could be an opportunity for you to essentially start a business on the black market, with much less overhead and much less regulation. And so for that, in order to take advantage of that, you might want to think, like, right now, figure out what it is you're going to do in order to earn an income during this time. And one of the, some of the things I would encourage you to look into would be selling food, water, and fuel. If you can come up with any one of those, it's going to be that all that is going to be in high demand. One of the things I would recommend is that you get a Peterson's Field Guide. If you've never heard of that, I'll leave that in the description box below. Peterson's Field Guide is a great resource. What it is, it's a book that has references to all kinds of edible plants that grow wild, that grow all over the United States. Not just edible plants, but also medicinal plants. So you would be able to identify those plants and harvest them, not just for yourself, but for the economy. So you'll essentially be able to bring those wild edibles and wild medicinals to the market in order to not just sustain yourself, but to sustain the other people around you. So just something to think about as far as the economy is concerned. You really want to be familiarize yourself with your local terrain. You want to know what areas to stay out of, what areas are dangerous, the areas in your terrain that maybe if you were there, it would put you in a bad spot. You would be vulnerable if you were in certain areas in your terrain. You need to familiarize yourself with areas nearby where you can hide and seek refuge during aerial bombardment, during ground invasions and assault. Where can you go for refuge? Also for egress, you want to be able to escape quickly if you have to. So, because insurgents normally destroy roadways, you want to have secondary and tertiary routes out of your city or out of your area. Some of the things you might want to think of are like power lines. You can follow the power lines out to the next city, or you can follow a train track, or maybe even some dirt trails or hiking trails. In order to really take advantage of those trails and those secondary routes, you might want to get something like a dirt bike, a four-wheeler, an ATV, a UTV, or even a 50cc scooter. I've taken 50cc scooters on dirt trails many times, and they do very well, especially if they're a 4-stroke, and they get very good gas mileage. So it's something you might want to look into. One of the things that insurgents do is that they destroy roads into and out of cities because it helps them to defend that city. And the reason they do that is because when they destroy bridges and roads, major highways, it forces the local government to usually to use helicopters to bring troops into the city, or to attack the city with drones or with jets. And it's really hard to fight a war like that, because it's hard to distinguish the innocent civilians from the insurgents, when you're operating in a helicopter or from a jet, especially in an urban environment. And the United States government is not going to want to kill innocent civilians, because they know that if they do that, then there's going to be more insurgents that rise against them. And so you could expect that the routes, the major highways into and out of your city are probably going to get destroyed. So that's why I say make sure that you have a secondary and a third, way out of the city that does not include the routes. And to piggyback off of that, you also want to make sure that you have maps that do not need, electricity. You want to have paper maps because if the GPS is cut off or if the internet is cut off, you need to be able to figure out a way to get out. You need to be able to have something physical to look at so that you can plan and plot a route. A good way that you can get a map or maps of the United States is to go to a truck stop like Flying J or Pilot's gas station. A lot of times they have maps of the United States. I always keep one in my car. They're really good. They're like $5 to $15, pretty cheap. Very, very effective. And they're always up to date. And so going back to what we started off, because the insurgents destroy utilities, they're going to attempt to also, you can expect that they're going to attempt to destroy the communication lines. So phone lines, which includes the internet and cell phone. So you're going to want to have a way or more than one way to receive signals from outside of your city. So you're going to want to have a TV antenna, the best long-range TV antenna that you can get, and you got to make sure you point it at the city that is not overrun by insurgents, so that you can see what is going on in that city, and make sure that when they are preparing a large-scale attack in the city that you're in, you can that way you'll know when that kind of stuff is going to happen, when the government is getting ready to do something in your area. You'll be able to get information from them and tune in to their broadcasts. And I'm going to touch on this briefly. I'm not going to go into a lot. One of the ways that you can basically create the internet or recreate the internet when the internet goes out is to get what's called a Yagi antenna. It's YAGI. Have a bunch of Yagi antennas set up all over the city, from one house to the other all over the city. And essentially what you can do with those Yagi antennas is create you could even just use them for a simple home network and share files with people from one side of the city to the other. And you can have a small IRC network so that you can communicate over the airwaves. I'm not going to go too much into that, but you can just look into that yourself. You want to make sure that you know the basics of field sanitation, and I'll leave a book in the description box below to help you out with field sanitation, because like I said, the utilities are going to be cut off, and if you're on the sewer line, that's probably going to include your sewer and your water. So you need to familiarize yourself with what to do with the doo-doo when you do the doo-doo. So, and also how you can take care of your own personal sanitation with less resources. So I know that was a lot for today's episode. The next one that we're going to talk about is physical preparations. So this one was just mental preparations, basically things that you need to be aware of. The next video is going to be physical preparations, things you can do physically during the conflict to keep yourself safe and alive. So stay tuned for the next video. If you like this stuff, please give it a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe, share. I put a lot of work and effort in these videos. And I'll leave a couple other of my videos right over here. And thanks for watching, guys. Catch you for the next one.